This video is brought to you by Battlezoo Eldamon. This expansion to Pathfinder 2nd Edition and D&D 5e is a Pokemon-style rule set that will allow all players to collect, befriend, train, and evolve 160 different Eldamon. Battlezoo Eldamon is coming to Kickstarter on July 26th. Hey everybody, Dave here with another Pathfinder rule reminder for you, and today's question is, when do you need to have a free hand in order to cast a spell? And this is something that came up in a game I was recently a player in, where we had a cleric who was casting spells while holding a shield in one hand and their weapon in their other hand, and it created a little bit of confusion over when they were allowed to cast spells that had somatic components while having both hands occupied. So first, spells typically are cast with at least one or more of three different spell components. Those are verbal, somatic, and material. And each one of those represents a different way that the caster summons, harnesses, or weaves magical energy. When a spell is listed as having a somatic component, that means they must be able to make gestures and move and motion in some fashion. This is usually viewed sort of like Doctor Strange, where he uses very intricate hand movements in order to cast his spells, and some other D20 based role-playing systems could be pretty strict about enforcing the ability to wiggle your fingers in order to cast spells with a somatic component. But in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, you actually do not need to have your hands free in order to cast spells with somatic components. So in the case of that cleric character who has a shield occupying one hand and has their weapon occupying the other, he can cast those while both hands are fully occupied. And the reason why that a person can cast these somatic spells even when their hands are completely occupied is found in the last sentence of the first paragraph of the rules explanation of the somatic component. It says, you can use this component while holding something in your hand, but not if you are restrained or otherwise unable to gesture freely. So as long as that character is able to gesture with their shield arm or with their hand that's holding the weapon, then they can cast those somatic components. They don't have to spend an action to put away their weapon before they can cast the spell with a somatic component. Next, let's take a look at material components. If a spellcaster wants to cast a spell that has a material component, then yes, they do need to have a hand free in order to retrieve and manipulate the piece of material that's being used in the spell. And also, if you're casting a spell with a focus component, then you need to have a free hand to retrieve that focus, maybe like a holy symbol for a cleric. But if you're already holding that focus, that holy symbol or whatever it may be, then you don't have to have a free hand. You just got to have that hand still occupied by the specific focus for the spell. Now, while we're on this topic, we should also talk about component substitution, because most classes have some way of adjusting the way that they use spell components where they can swap out one thing for another. So for example, bards, whenever they're casting spells from the occult spell list, they can use a musical instrument that they're playing to take the place of any material or somatic components. So if they are playing a lute, both hands are occupied. They don't have to have a hand free to go into a material component pouch to get a piece of material component. The fact that they're playing the instrument substitutes the need for that material component as long as they're casting occult spells. Likewise, clerics can use their defined focus like a holy symbol in place of any material components, so they wouldn't need to have a hand free to retrieve any material components as long as they're already holding that holy symbol. And sorcerers and innate spellcasters can just substitute any material components out and instead use a somatic component in their place. And many other spellcasting classes also have some way that they manage component substitution, so make sure you check those out if you're playing one of those other classes. So in a nutshell, when do you need to have a free hand to cast a spell? Not when you're casting somatic spells. You just need to be able to move relatively freely and gesture in some fashion, but you do need a free hand whenever you're casting a material component, so you can retrieve that component and manipulate it, And with a focus, you need to have a free hand to retrieve that focus, not if you're already holding the focus. And keep in mind that most classes have some way that they can swap out one spell component for another, like bards who don't need to worry about somatic or material components when they're casting occult spells and playing a musical instrument. So that will do it for today. As always, if you have any suggestions for future rule reminders, please leave those in the comments. I'll make sure to leave links in the description of this video for any of my other videos that touch on this topic. And as always, I want to take a quick moment to say thank you to everybody out there who supports me, whether that's by clicking the like button, subscribing to the channel, subscribing to the Patreon, buying a super thanks, sharing the videos with your friends. It all adds up, and I greatly appreciate what the community does to support me. With that, thanks for watching, take care, and happy gaming.